Have you ever noticed how quickly affection fades the moment you stop giving people what they want? One day you are praised, admired, even adored. The next, a single disappointment, a single unpopular choice, and suddenly the warmth is gone. The same mouths that once sang your virtues now whisper doubts, criticisms, and betrayals. Love, you realize, is a fair-weather companion. It is soft, fragile, beautiful perhaps, but fleeting. But fear endures. Fear does not depend on mood, or on gratitude, or on memory. Fear strikes deeper into the marrow of human instinct. It makes people pause before betraying you, hesitate before crossing you, calculate before acting against you. Love can be forgotten. Fear is remembered. Niccolò Machiavelli, that most unsettling thinker of the Renaissance, understood this truth with brutal clarity. In his words, "It is better to be feared than loved, if you cannot be both." He was not encouraging cruelty for cruelty's sake. He was describing reality. He saw, long before modern psychology confirmed it, that the human mind clings to safety more than affection, and that survival always outweighs sentiment. Look at your own life. How many times have you tried to win people with kindness, with generosity, with love, only to find that the moment you said no, their affection evaporated? How many times have you been left wondering why loyalty proved so fragile? Perhaps it is not because you were unworthy of love, but because love itself is unworthy of trust. In this video, we will dive into Machiavelli's most infamous insight: why fear often works better than love. Not to glorify cruelty, but to uncover the psychology, the history, and the practical lessons hidden in this disturbing truth. When Machiavelli wrote The Prince in the early 16th century, he shattered illusions that had long comforted rulers and subjects alike. He dared to ask the question no one wanted to face. If forced to choose, is it better to be loved or feared? His answer, calm, cold, and unwavering, was fear. For centuries, this single line has been pulled from its pages, quoted by admirers and condemned by critics. Yet few pause to consider the depth behind it. Machiavelli was not merely instructing tyrants, he was exposing the hidden mechanics of power, and in doing so, he revealed something unflattering about the human heart. Love, he observed, is fragile. It depends upon fortune, upon mood, upon circumstances that shift as easily as the weather. A leader might be cherished in times of prosperity, when bread is plentiful and peace reigns. But let famine strike, or war press upon the gates, and that affection can sour overnight into resentment. Love withers beneath hardship because it is bound to desire, and desire is never satisfied for long. In contrast, fear does not flutter with the wind. It is anchored in survival, and survival does not negotiate. Modern psychology confirms this with brutal precision. Neuroscientists have shown that the amygdala, the region of the brain responsible for processing fear, reacts with greater speed and intensity than the circuits responsible for positive emotions. Fear seizes attention, narrows focus, and demands obedience. Love, by comparison, requires trust, goodwill, and reciprocity, qualities that are fragile, easily broken, and slow to rebuild. This is why betrayals sever love more decisively than punishments sever fear. Punishment is remembered with caution. Betrayal is remembered with bitterness. Consider how people behave under authority. A worker may admire a kindly employer, may even feel affection toward them. But if the rules are lax, if discipline is absent, admiration does not stop disorder from spreading. Yet introduce the possibility of consequence, the certainty that misconduct will not go unnoticed, and suddenly order is restored. It is not affection that preserves the boundary, it is the fear of loss, of punishment, of exposure. In this sense, Machiavelli was not promoting cruelty, but precision. He understood that stability rests not upon sentiment, but upon consequence. Still, he warned against the extremes. Excessive cruelty breeds hatred, and hatred is dangerous. The art lies in balance. Enough fear to secure loyalty, never so much that it provokes rebellion. Machiavelli, ever the realist, advised rulers to be cautious with kindness, deliberate with severity, and always attentive to appearances. To be feared but not despised, respected but not merely adored. And here lies the uncomfortable truth. His insights were not confined to palaces and thrones. They pulse within every human relationship. In families, workplaces, and nations alike, love may inspire, but fear sustains. Love is voluntary, fear is instinctive. Love asks, fear compels. And when survival is at stake, compulsion always outweighs request. This opens the door to a deeper question, one that pulls us from political philosophy into the realm of psychology itself. Why does fear grip us so powerfully while love, as noble as it feels, fades so quickly under strain? What is it in the human mind that makes pain more memorable than pleasure, punishment more binding than affection? To answer this, we must step from Machiavelli's Renaissance streets into the laboratories of modern science, where the wiring of the human brain reveals the same harsh truths he uncovered centuries ago. If this content is resonating with you, consider subscribing. I make videos that help you see the world and yourself more clearly. Thank you. If Machiavelli's quill revealed the hard truth of political life, psychology later revealed why it was true of human life itself. At the root of his argument lies not a cynical opinion, but a fundamental law of the mind. Fear commands us because survival demands it. Neuroscientists have long observed that the brain is not impartial when weighing experience. Negative stimuli, threats, punishments, losses are processed more rapidly and remembered more vividly than positive ones. This bias, known as the negativity effect, is no mere quirk. It is an inheritance from our ancestors, whose lives depended on noticing the rustle of a predator in the grass far more than the beauty of a sunset. To forget kindness is unfortunate. To forget danger is fatal. Thus, fear takes precedence. Love, by contrast, requires conditions. It thrives on trust, reciprocity, and safety. When these are broken, love quickly dissolves, revealing its fragile architecture. A leader may inspire affection by generosity, by charm, by warmth. Yet affection is easily betrayed when resources dry up or loyalties shift. Fear, however, requires no such delicate scaffolding. Its foundation is self-preservation, a drive so primal that it precedes reason itself. Psychologists Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky called this tendency loss aversion. Their research showed that the pain of losing something is felt far more intensely than the pleasure of gaining it. Applied to power, this means people are more motivated to avoid punishment than to pursue reward. It is why soldiers may fight harder to avoid disgrace than to achieve glory, why employees often obey the boss they dread rather than the one they merely admire, why children sometimes heed the stern parent more than the indulgent one. The shadow of loss is more commanding than the promise of gain. Even in everyday life you can see this law unfold. Imagine two managers in a workplace. The first is beloved, generous with praise, kind, easy to approach. The second is respected but strict, enforcing clear rules and consequences. The loved manager may find that affection wavers when hard decisions must be made, when layoffs occur, when standards slip, when leniency is no longer possible. The strict manager, however, holds steady authority, for their employees know exactly where the boundaries lie. In the realm of obedience, predictability coupled with consequence outweighs charm. This is not to say that love has no power. Indeed, Love can inspire sacrifice and devotion where fear cannot reach. But love requires nurture, and it is easily eroded. Fear, though often resented, remains more stable, precisely because it does not depend on goodwill, but on instinct. Machiavelli, in his blunt way, saw this centuries before science confirmed it. Yet this raises a sobering question. If fear is so powerful, does history not overflow with examples of leaders who wielded it ruthlessly? Surely the chronicles of kings and emperors must confirm this principle more vividly than any psychological experiment. Indeed, they do. For the annals of history are filled with rulers who learned that fear holds nations together more tightly than affection, and with others who discovered that leaning too heavily on love is a swift path to downfall. And so, having traced the wiring of the human mind, let us now turn to the stage of history itself. Let us walk among emperors and dictators, kings and politicians, to see how this principle of fear over love has shaped civilizations, toppled thrones, and even echoes in the corridors of modern power. History, if read with unclouded eyes, becomes less a tale of noble ideals and more a theater of fear. From the Roman Senate to the marble courts of Renaissance princes, one finds the same lesson repeated. Rulers who relied solely upon love fell swiftly, while those who mastered fear endured. Machiavelli, with his careful observation of power, was not theorizing in abstraction. He was describing patterns carved into the centuries themselves. Consider the Roman Republic. Julius Caesar inspired devotion by rewarding his soldiers with land and spoils. His legions adored him, and for a time, that affection seemed unbreakable. Yet affection is fickle. When ambition grew too bold, his popularity became a threat to the Senate, and daggers found his heart. It was Augustus, his heir, who secured stability. Augustus was not loved with passion, but respected with fear. He institutionalized authority, paired clemency with consequence, and ensured betrayal carried penalties too heavy to ignore. Thus, Rome entered its long imperial age not on love's foundation, but on the disciplined respect born of fear. The Middle Ages echoed the same truth. Kings who sought only to be loved often became pawns of their own nobles, manipulated and discarded. Meanwhile, rulers such as William the Conqueror or Frederick Barbarossa wielded authority with a mixture of reward and retribution. Their followers might not have adored them, but they dared not abandon them either. Fear steadied the throne where affection could not. Fast forward to the 20th century, where the machinery of fear reached industrial scale. Stalin did not merely command loyalty. He commanded silence, obedience, and terror so pervasive that even private thoughts seemed unsafe. The result was grim but effective. Millions complied because the cost of defiance was annihilation. Mussolini, Hitler, Mao, all crafted myths of affection, parades of unity, songs of devotion. Yet beneath those orchestrated displays, the true engine was fear. Crowds might have cheered, but it was the dread of consequences that kept them in line. Love provided the stage, but fear held the chains. And yet the same pattern is visible in quieter places, in the modern workplace, in politics, even in households. Studies on organizational psychology have shown that employees often comply more consistently with leaders who set firm boundaries and clear consequences than with those who merely try to be liked. A boss who wants only to be loved risks being dismissed as weak, but one who enforces rules, even at the cost of popularity, earns respect. The parallel is unmistakable. Just as nations bend beneath authority enforced by consequence, so too do smaller groups and families. But here lies the nuance Machiavelli himself emphasized. Fear cannot be allowed to decay into hatred. For hatred breeds rebellion as surely as indulgence breeds chaos. A ruler, or a leader of any kind, must craft a balance. Too much fear and resentment explodes into resistance. Too much love and authority dissolves into weakness. The art lies in combining fear's durability with love's charm, in holding respect through consequence without suffocating the loyalty that affection can inspire. And so, what does this mean for us today? We are no longer emperors commanding legions or kings defending castles. Yet each of us governs something: our work, our relationships, our lives. How then does Machiavelli's principle translate into the modern soul's pursuit of strength and stability? To answer this, we must leave behind the echoes of history and enter our own time, where power is measured not by armies, but by influence, boundaries, and self-respect. It is here that the lessons of fear and love become personal. What, then, are we to do with Machiavelli's unsettling truth? We are not princes of Florence nor emperors of Rome, yet the laws he uncovered did not belong to his century alone. They belong to human nature itself, and wherever there are human beings, whether in palaces, in workplaces, or in our most intimate relationships, the dance of fear and love continues. The first lesson is that fear does not mean cruelty. To embrace Machiavelli's wisdom in daily life is not to dominate others with malice, but to recognize that boundaries are the truest form of respect. A leader who seeks only to be loved often falls into the trap of indulgence. They hesitate to enforce consequences, and in doing so, they weaken their own authority. Modern psychology has confirmed this. Groups function best when expectations are clear and rules are enforced consistently. A manager who allows disorder for the sake of being liked creates confusion, whereas one who calmly applies standards, even when unpopular, creates stability. Stability, though it may not be adored, earns respect. In personal relationships, the same law applies in quieter ways. How often do people bend themselves to win affection, agreeing to what they do not want, silencing their needs for fear of rejection? They chase love at the cost of self-respect, and in the end, discover that love without respect collapses under its own weight. True connection requires both warmth and firmness. To set boundaries, to make clear what will not be tolerated, is to weave fear, not as menace, but as respect. When others know where the line stands, affection deepens rather than erodes, because love without limits becomes exploitation, but love within limits becomes trust. Yet balance is everything. Machiavelli himself warned that while fear endures longer than love, hatred is fatal. Fear that slips into cruelty or humiliation ceases to command respect and instead breeds rebellion. A ruler who is hated is not secure, no matter how feared. The same is true in modern life. A boss who terrorizes workers creates disengagement. A parent who rules with only punishment raises resentment. A partner who uses fear without tenderness destroys trust. The art is in blending firmness with fairness, consequence with care. Psychology supports this as well. Studies of authoritative parenting show that children raised with both warmth and structure flourish far more than those raised in either indulgence or tyranny. Fear guides, love heals. Together they create resilience. The practical takeaway is simple yet difficult. You must learn to stop choosing love at the expense of respect. Whether in leadership, in relationships, or even in your own self-talk, boundaries are not cruelty. They are dignity. Fear teaches others what must never be crossed. Love teaches them why you are worth staying for. To wield both is to move through the world not as a pawn of others' approval, but as a sovereign of your own presence. Now I turn the question to you. In your own life, where have you chosen to be loved when you should have chosen to be respected? Have there been moments where your silence, your indulgence, your fear of rejection led others to mistake kindness for weakness? Reflect on this, and if this message resonates, I invite you to declare it openly. Write in the comments, "Respect over approval. Not for me, but for yourself," as a public vow that you will no longer sell your dignity for affection. For Machiavelli's old truth is not about cruelty, but about survival. And survival in every age belongs not to the adored, but to the respected.